Kia ora and greetings from Aotearoa, known as New Zealand to many, land of the long white cloud to quite a few more, and in the ancient terminology, long threshold to the universe. And it is a homecoming, a return to origin and a return to our place of belonging as we restore relationship within ourselves, with each other, and our planet. And such a gift to meet Yssah today in Mexico, across the Ring of Fire, across our Pacific Ocean. And also on this day, as we begin the next cycle in the 9th wave of the Mayan calendar. So it's a day 1. It's a time of conception, creation. And we're very curious what wishes to emerge through the field today during our tea break at the Cosmic Cafe on the event horizon of our new Earth that is birthing simultaneously as the old one is deconstructing. And it is also the day that Pluto moves into Aquarius for the next 19 years. Pluto, according to Western astrology, Pluto's been dancing in and out of Aquarius for the past 12 months or so. But today, Pluto moves in for the next 19 years. So it's very influential on this time of evolution for consciousness of humanity. We will notice it in the evolution of consciousness and also in technology. And to know that the last time Pluto was in Aquarius, it was the time of the French Revolution, the American Revolution, and the Haitian Revolution. So it's going to be really important at this time of revolution, rapid evolution, that we really bring love and consciousness into the field of creation so that we don't repeat the past, that we can bring any distortion into coherence so we can really birth something new here. So welcome everyone to join us across the Pacific Ring of Fire on this day of creation, of birthing something new.
Yes, welcome. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for having me in one more cosmic tea, and for many more to come, as there are so many things bridging into this new earth, as you were saying, and which we are active ambassadors of these primordial codes that are just now reflecting into our own cosmic nature. We're just igniting, as how I perceive it, we are igniting that mirror within us to acknowledge that all that information that we have been longing for has been all the time within us. And acknowledging is not just a matter of knowingness, it's also a fact of embodiment. And this is where science and spirituality come together, because one connects with the information of that space memory network, of that Akasha, whereas the other one materializes it, finds the way, the formulas in order to bring it into the matter. And I do believe that part of that, as you were saying, cross section in which Pluto comes uh, into resonance with Aquarius, and in order to tune into the strongest spatiotemporal constant in which we actually thrive in unity, it is important to unify that which this simulation matrix has put as a reality of separation in between our thinking and our feeling, mainly translating into science and spirituality. So I do believe that we have covered this for a while ago, and then referring it into the heart mind, the heart and the mind, or the heart and the brain. And the way that we can translate it as a collective consciousness is precisely through spirituality and through science, you know? And that revolutionary state, while you were talking about this, it brought me like the image of Pluto and the shape of the heart that it has in its surface, you know? And how you were talking about the ninth wave and how at some point Pluto was considered the ninth planet and then removed. And somehow I do believe that uh, for a very specific reason, at some point, Pluto was considered the ninth planet. I'm not saying it is, I'm not saying it was. I'm just saying that it came into that field of a ninth uh, exposition of a celestial body within the solar system, because it is showing to us that a revolution through the heart is sustainable. Coming from a space of the heart is sustainable. A revolution coming from the guts is unsustainable. And that's for me how we break through that loop, that cycle, because our principles, our ethics as a humanity were put outside, were put on an egregor, on an institutional system. Everything was based on what we are meant to be, or what we are meant to give in order to be part of something, of a society, of of a humanity that didn't even know its origin. The more that we come close to what our true origin is, the more way that we can actually detach from that need of putting our ethics in something that is based on a simulation of separation, and then restore it within us onto its true nature, into its true origin, which is, if we, like, you have this beautiful black hole, the beautiful image of that black hole behind you, and more the nature of the black hole is coming. And if we translate it into our biological body, we go through our chakras, we go through our dantians, we go through every proton that constitutes that it's in our cells, and we go to our own singularity, which is in our heart. You know, that point in our body where that black hole and the communion of all those tiny black bodies bring in all the information, and we're capable to torsion it. And in order for the everyone that is listening and watching this show is, or this cosmic tea, uh, that are joining us, grateful for that. When we truly not only acknowledge the power of our heart, yet embody it, we are being that fractal to the source, to all, where all the information that is suspended around everything, like what's happening socially wise, politically wise, economically wise, and so forth. We are just bringing all that energy, all that information, as the energetic generators that we are ourselves, because now we had been drained. But if we can give and emanate and emit a lot of energy, we can also receive. So if we bring all that energy just as information that is creating this simulation,
and detach emotionally. Just look at it as information, as energy coming into our Taurus, coming into our Taurus. And then when they reach the singularity, we torsion it. We just torsion it. How? How can it be so easy? Because it's an illusion. It's just energy. And now we're giving it a different purpose. And the more that we practice this, the more that we are capable to actually materialize this, you know? And yeah, so thank you for putting that on my call.
Yeah, you know, it's it's extraordinary to explain, but on this journey of embodiment and evolution, there's nothing new we actually have to put into these systems. It's simply a matter of unpacking all that was not our essential and true nature, unpacking all distortion and bring it into coherence, dismantling our societal programming and conditioning so that we may see through the illusion and step into the not knowing. I remember many years ago when I was stepping out of this beautiful land I was born in, and my message then was time to step into the unknown. It's like, could feel the tension in that and the necessity of it. So it took a while to actually step into the unknown, but once I got into there, it was quite simple. Now learn to live in the not knowing. And what I didn't realize until arriving there, and it's still being a work in progress, is that when we can live in the not knowing, we have access to the all knowing.
Exactly. 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 Thank you. Thank you for saying that because, well, it doesn't surprise me. It's like I've been, now that you mention it, because I have been tuning into very specific practices. Like for something simple, like it's breath work, you know, that you go all the way to your own limits, your own mental boundaries. And then as soon as you think, well, me, you know, like I'm about to pass out because I'm not bringing any more breath in, it's just a second, less than a second, that you transcend that idea of what can happen. And then you trust, and then you access to that fullness, to that wholeness, you know, and that is continuously happening. This is why I was saying the practice, you know, that practice of generating that vacuum within us, generating that torsion within us, of bringing in all the energy and just shifting perspectives, because it's us who are torsioning, not the information itself. We are torsioning our perception. And the more that we get to connect and embody and experience that, what you have just said of stepping into the unknowingness and then accessing to the full, the absolute knowingness, is the more that we practice that void, as the monks used to do, you know, like that full trust, just presence, full presence, and receptivity of that which is just waiting for us to remove our shields of self-protection, of and survival mode, of just, you know, like trying to control everything, you know, going through that automatic form of resolution in our reality, where we think that we are in control of everything, and then we go into that fight. When we surrender to our power, when we surrender to our power, is because we have accepted
the idea of not having any power at all. Yeah.
And that's how the polarity comes into unity.
Yes.
Yeah, it's quite extraordinary. It's like on that journey home to South, so many are afraid of the dark and keep challenging themselves to step into the dark, to step into our unconscious, to excavate that which is informing our reality that we do not know. And there's a kind of a tipping point on that when an individual has excavated enough of their personal and collective unconscious that all of a sudden there's kind of a space in between, a pause and a tipping point where, oh, no longer afraid of the dark, however, maybe afraid of the light.
Exactly.
And there's like, oh, how could I choose to be chosen and step into this? Who am I to do that? Which is actually an ego construct as well. However, it's a really interesting tipping point on the journey. Instead of being afraid of the dark, it's like, whoa, what does it mean? And what is my responsibility if I say yes to these next steps on this pathway I have chosen for myself and dedicated so much time and energy to? And what's exciting is there's so many individuals now on that tipping point of, am I really ready to let go, to unplug from the momentum tunnel of consensual reality and take a leap of faith and trust out of that cosmic cafe on the event horizon and free fall into the void, into the not knowing, and learn to live here, reside here in the cauldron of creation where all and everything emerges from.
Yes. Yes. And I absolutely agree with that, about that which you have just mentioned, that it sometimes we reach a point that perhaps it was from the very beginning, that we are, or we could be in fear of assuming our light. And then it creates all that, motion of patterns holding to the darkness, and then fear to darkness. But the core to it is that being our full potential, or progressively our full potential, the implications to that, what do I need to do? What am I required to get to facilitate, to release from my field? Where am I supposed to go and be, and when, and with whom? All those questions, that it is kind of that feeling of the survival instinct, like what's going to happen? Yeah, because it's the ego, it's that part that is, it's collapsing. Yet when we explain to our ego that it's not going to dissolve, it's not going to fade away, well, I mean, it's not going to be destroyed, actually it's going to be transformed into something more beautiful, and yeah, that part, when we acknowledge that we had been fearful, or being in fear of our own light, or of the full potential of our light, then also we release a lot of weight, because then we get to understand it. It's like going through to see the full spectrum and saying, oh, now I get it. It wasn't much about the shadow. It was more about the light, and then
Yeah. And another one too is that responsibility, so many of us have been programmed, responsibility is a cross to bear. Where if we change the way we hold responsibility as it's simply the ability to respond, what does that look like? Because then we get to make art of life. We realize that this is assimilation we're getting to experience in physical form. And in a way, it's a multi-dimensional game that we're playing. That's where I often think these people, young people who are addicted to gaming, when they get the hang of this game on Earth, they're going to actually be really good at it because they've got the neural pathways to bring resolution when things aren't flowing. And then we actually get to play really consciously in the simulation of creation. And what is that going to look like when so many of us start playing the simulation through the heart space, through love as center, through soul as leader?
Exactly.
Yes.
Yes.
The ego and the ego is our personality, and it has a role. It has a role to actually take care of ourselves on the earth plane. But so when we realize there's actually nothing to fear here, except whatever characters the illusion is placed into the simulation, then we're able to come into alignment with our physical body, mental body, emotional body, and soul. Physical, mental, emotional being the earth team, following the leadership of the soul, they're the ones to mental body to follow and implement change. The emotional body is energy and motion. How do we actually harness the energy of our emotional body really consciously and direct it rather than suppressing it?
Exactly. Yeah. And that's when we get to actually use our heart as a vortex.
Yeah.
You know, we get to discover new ways, at least from our state of awareness, of how can our body actually serve a purpose that it's aligned to a higher truth than just sustaining enough to be alive in this plane. You know how we can actually access to multidimensional to our multidimensional nature through our own physical body, which we could say it's the most attached to this 3D, but actually it's also our gateway to our multidimensional nature.
Yeah, because that was the other one, the physical body, by landing fully into the physical body, that is our barometer of the soul, but also our discernment device through this dimension, others, which is a real key and can tell us when we are in truth and when others are in truth, or obviously when they're not. The way my system was responding to you speaking into Pluto of the ninth planet was in a big shower of ecstasy because of the truth of that and the connection between the ninth planet and the ninth wave that we're stepping into today as Pluto spins into Aquarius.
Exactly.
They're really connected, and my whole system could resonate with that. So what Yssah is speaking is truth, and not over my mind. My mind didn't understand why. However, because my soul is anchored through my physical, the resonance through the field tells truth. And this is really interesting because on our full moon gathering on Guardians of Gaia call on Saturday, Friday in the US, we actually went through a process there of integration of our extraterrestrial nature of our soul into our physical human animal bodies. So maybe I'll add a link to that in the bottom of this for anybody who's interested in going through that process to support that integration.
Well, that's super important. And for me, it's like there are many things that you have said, like, you know, it's like an expansive way to open into a whole universe. So for instance, you were saying about the heart, you know, and we were talking about the Mayan and the ninth wave and so forth. For me, it's important to transcend the distortion of the heart sacrifice that has been put as an anchor, not to connect with that ancient knowledge. Because a lot of people, as soon as they hear about the Mayans or the Aztecs, you know, they say, oh, heart sacrifice, oh, sacrifice, you know, blood, bam, bam. So for me, that's just one aspect of history that was precisely written in order to establish boundaries and to create rejection with towards some information that is beyond, if you are capable to cross that boundary of condemned and rejection and a judgmental aspect of our form of perception, then we can actually reach to the gold of it. And what's the gold of it? I've been going, as you know, to ancient sites and very related to very specific indigenous tribes, ancient indigenous tribes, including Mayans, Aztecs, Toltecs, and Mexicas, and so forth. And the true nature of the story of the heart sacrifice is about detaching our heart from the matter, from the idea of the matter, and then expanding it into the essence and that which is not evident, not literally, you know, like not literally taking the heart out. No, it's the fact that you have released and you're free from the fear of attaching to anything that is an illusion. Therefore, bringing your heart into a higher space where it is returning to the source, to all, and therefore you're capable to bring in all those codes and expand and generate heart grids or heart networks that were sustained through those hard disks that I received again when I went to Atitlan, and that we had already spoken about a year ago. And that for me, it was so needed that there are actually, well, I say 13 because it's 12 plus 1. There are actually several groups, like 12 groups of 12 discs, that each one of the colonies related to Atlantis and to Lemuria, when we put them together, they complete 144 discs. And each one of those discs, those discs are groups of 12 that are connected to something in a specific, including the bloodline of that community, you know, of that galactic community. So the purpose of those, when you put together those 144 discs together, representing Atlantis and Lemuria, like the brain and the heart, or science and spirituality, when you put them together, they create a resonant field of a sphere that all the cubes that were planted are aligned to that force. And then they start to reopen and restore the stargates that actually connect with the consciousness, the galactic communities that were enhancing a system agreed in the earth that could actually direct to that point of origin in relation to the primordial codes that those races imprinted in this in the humanity, and also in the soil, in the ground. And that also supports Earth's Merkaba through this transition process of its magnetic field weakening and energetic pulse, well, magnetic pulse reversal, which cannot go. It's a possibility that depends on us how the outcome will be.
So this is really interesting, because my understanding is we have 12 chambers of the heart. And during our embodiment and evolutionary process, they reopen. And of course, the 12 then become the 13th, then become the 1.
Mm-hmm.
And this, what you're sharing now, is also connected with this next wave of incoming galactics that were arriving, which is connected with my pregnancy in 2012. Did I tell you I was pregnant?
No.
So when I came onto this earth, I knew I was not here to have children in this lifetime. And therefore I never subscribed to society's program, get married, have children, da, 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 da. So I went on a big adventure instead. And in saying that, shortly after I had my cosmic kick out of Africa, my conservation work, my 20-year relationship into the not knowing and into forgetting so that I could remember. Part of that journey, why I walked a red road path of awakening with the Andean and Amazon shamanic traditions. And after that was soon taken to the door of the Neo-Tantra fields and sacred sexuality. So although my agreement field with my partner was no children, we had actually just been teaching at a doula's house outside of Warsaw in the heart of Europe. And when we made love the next morning, I was ovulating and he went over the edge and I conceived. And I knew, although I tried to keep a secret from myself, I had conceived because of the changes I was experiencing in my body and from the moment of that conception. So whilst I was in my first weeks, I ended up making a journey from the heart of Europe up through Scandinavia, across to Mount Shasta, down through Sedona, across to Hawaii, and then to Aotearoa in New Zealand. During that journey, this being that was connected with the conception gave me the name. Her name was Shekinah. And I had to, at that time, even look up Shekinah and see what Shekinah meant, because I didn't have a conscious understanding. And then I met Shelley Lemaire of Incoming Souls, who's taken a very scientific approach and been studying it and working with the incomings for many, many years now, probably at least 20, 25 years now. We had never met in person. She didn't know I was pregnant, but we met under Mangere Mountain, the Maunga, that's close to Auckland Airport. And in this process, we discovered that Shekinah was the 13th of 12 that would anchor in the new star systems for the planetary body. This was resonating true to both of us. And that's all we knew. And then I had a conference in Mana Retreat Center in the North Island on the Coromandel Peninsula, Crystalline Peninsula, more of a light workers conference. And then one in South, close to Christchurch, another one in the South Island. And after that, we made a journey overland from Christchurch, only an hour and a half inland, to Tikohanga, or Castle Hill, that the Dalai Lama refers to the birthplace of the universe, or the birthplace of the gods. And I miscarried. So I was never meant to have children. However, I was meant to go through that process of conception and carry that seed of consciousness that we understood then to be the unity between creation and destruction. To that point known as the birthplace of the gods, where my role was complete. Now, fast forward to 2022, 10 years later, the soul group of that monad began incarnating. My goddaughter is of Shekinah's monad, and she arrived into Scandinavia in 2022, followed by another 4 of that monad landed in a very close proximity to that time space. And then recently, from my journey in Bali and Indonesia, was working with the next one to arrive in 2024, who was the first of the following 7 to arrive. And they're anchoring in the new star systems for our planetary system that will enable souls to come and direct from their galactic sources without having to pass through our sun as a stargate to arrive. And they're landing fully intact with their Homo Galacticus, their galactic architecture, and are not likely to come out of that, for they are landing through the unified field of the parents that are conceiving them.
Well, that's beautiful, and thank you for sharing. Yeah, thank you for sharing.
Yeah, to be shared in our journey today. So
yes,
connected here.
Yeah, there are a lot of there is. I mean, we always weave. The thing is that what we are weaving, it's at such a different level. It's such a different level, and a lot of codes coming in. So in relation to that, when we talk about all these numerical values and groups and monads coming, and then as you were mentioning, the 9 and then the 12 and the +1, 13 and so forth. How I see is that we're bringing a new symphony to the world. We are chanting together a new melody, which is actually creating resonance in the earth and into the cosmos. We are restoring our natural rhythm, and each one of us is playing a different harmonious song, the soul song, being guided by our spirit. And those new star connections, interstellar connections that you are mentioning, for me, are quite connected to all these upgrades in relation to the zodiac, where we are actually restoring also the connection to what we know as the fixed stars, that we also know as the 29 lunar stations. I mean, like speaking in this first ring, like the ring of knowledge. Of course, there are many more star systems, like this will be in such resonance with you, like Laineakea, which is known as this star cluster that is the soul of the cosmos, of the universe. And it's in quite resonance with the original name of New Zealand, and this community that you just went to. If you put Laineakea.
Yeah, this seems relevant. I've just spent a week on Aotea, which is an island off the east coast of Aotearoa, also known as Great Barrier Island, that I first visited 33 years ago by yacht. And and I was gathering with a group, an international group with for a biomimicry immersion. And this particular one was biomimicry 3.8, for we have 3.8 billion years of evolution or wisdom to call upon in what we're creating now. And that has been a big homecoming in itself, and also to be in the field of Aotea with so many brilliant minds who are here to bridge and birth our new earth systems and structures, from education and finance to environment and community. And it was very, very interesting to be in such a field of intelligence that had not yet tapped into the quantum field as a resource. In biomimicry, nature is a mentor, a medium, a model. And I'm also tapping into the mirror and the muse that nature is, and that we are not separate from nature, we are nature. And when we can actually become one with nature, when we can restore our unity within our own system with nature, everything else falls into place. It doesn't require a lot of hard work or effort to do so. And this is, I remember a line from Dr. Alberto Villoldo of the Four Winds. He said, as shaman, you're not here to try and influence change where the river meets the ocean. You are here to dip your finger in the spring of the river and change the course of the entire river. So how do we make a bigger change with less amount of effort? And the way for us to do that is to be able to access the quantum field and the unseen realms and the wisdom that lies in the all-knowing to bring into the knowing. And it takes a lot of the manual labor and hard work and effort out of the journey and brings a lot more play and creativity into the journey.
Exactly. Absolutely. Thank you for saying this, because it reminded me, like AI, like AI taking over all those jobs that require a lot of time and a lot of, like just systematic movements. And the other side of it is that people now could have more time to give to themselves and discover, that which is more connected to nature. But for that, we need to lose fear. We need to trust. We need to release bring our hand back that was, attached to the hand of religion, of government, economic system, banks, and so forth, that it was, like holding our hands all the way, like children, and saying, okay, I'm ready to walk on my own, and I'm ready to create my new life, a new community, a new reality. And I trust that all the means are given. There is nature, there is food, there is a space. Like that idea of overpopulation, that going beyond the limits of what it can be actually healthy for our planet Earth, to hold the space for a specific amount of humans, that we are going beyond that limit, overpopulation, in other words. That's not true. There is a lot of land. There is a lot of land that, of course, there are other things that we can take into consideration, like embodying a very specific level of consciousness in order to, hold the space for those generations that are coming, and to actually be there for them, just to expand their own encoding, the new encoding. That's how those seeds coming from the stars that we are actually as well embodying.
Yeah. And this is where, there is enough for everyone. When you look at nature as mentor, nature only takes what it needs. It doesn't take any more, and nature doesn't hoard. If there's an abundant season, nature distributes to a wider area. If there is a challenging season, nature still distributes locally. But there's no hoarding. And that hand that's been holding on to an old system is a hand that was coming from the victim that needs rescuing or saving, where power is outside of self. And humanity are being called to let that hand go and reclaim sovereignty. And land as people have soul destiny, and the soul destiny of Aotearoa is a reclamation of sovereignty, as is the soul destiny of Ireland, as is the soul destiny of Canada. And we've spoken about the triangulation between the three nations. And it was really interesting because on our field trip with this group, I was blessed to be riding along in the vehicle with a local Maori brother wisdom keeper and the kaitiaki, the guardian of the island. And for some reason, I was prompted to ask our brother Marcus to communicate about the Treaty of Waitangi, because the Treaty of Waitangi was a treaty signed between the British colonialists and the local people and residents at the time, the Māori. And the way that was translated and interpreted was very different between both peoples. So legally, the New Zealand government doesn't have a leg to stand on as far as governing this land. And that will actually ultimately support Aotearoa into sovereignty. And without knowing this, there was a big hikoi walk, a demonstration of communication of the breach in this agreement taking place in Aotearoa. And the day we came out off the island, many of the cabinet within Parliament joined in a haka, a challenge and a protest, and tore the paperwork up in Parliament. And today is another big day of this. So what is taking place is actually that transference of power, that restoring of unity consciousness, of relationship, of reciprocity. And what's going to be really interesting to witness is how can Aotearoa do this and stand together as one people in this reclamation of sovereignty for ourselves as individuals, for our country, and for the planet, as it then has a ripple effect out across the planet.
Yes. While you were saying this, I was thinking, like, what's the difference at, let's say, even a biological scale in between the tribes, the indigenous tribes that have achieved staying aside the most that they have been able to, aside of the control system? You know, is there something genetically speaking that within the encoding, the chromosomic encoding, dormant genes or not, and that actually all this attachment to technology, like antennas and so forth, can be enhancing, you know, or trying to enhance those, let's say, for those dormant genes to keep in a dormant state, you know, or actually they induce them into that hibernation state, you know. And for me, it is very evident, because, I mean, perhaps some people can just relate it to the fact that, okay, when you are connecting with nature, then you're creating that field of resonance, and then you're staying away from, you know, all the influence, the visuals, sounds, everything, like at every scale, all that influence that the control system can have on you. Yes, and through food and through, you know, like all of that, in order to remain virgin, to say it somehow, you know, like in order to keep that purity that actually, I do believe that the Mu aspect, the Lemurian aspect, where, like, you know, trying to preserve that level of connection with nature, you know, in order all the way even to master it, you know, like to become one with all the elements, in order to blend in and merge into the Earth's consciousness as one. Are you there?
I'm here. And I've got you. So carry on.
Hello?
Oh, that's interesting. Can you hear
Yeah.
me?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, we've
I'm here.
let's just check.
Okay. Can you
Carry
hear me?
on that theme about, yeah, it's about as we embody, as we become one with nature, as we merge and become one with the elements and reconnect and experience the earth through our own earthly bodies.
Exactly, because then we are actually fulfilling that purpose of unity, are mirroring into the earth and raising our consciousness as one. Like for instance, if that has happened with the hologram, like merging with the hologram, and then now even trying to merge other kind of aspects within our own biology, then now what happens if we continue that path that we went away from, and restoring all our connection to nature to a level that we are breathing as one. And that's how the galactic community, from the beings that have the highest level of consciousness, function. They become one with their surrounding, and then they are even capable to generate higher forms of configuration within the universe. Like as you were saying, the shamans, how they express it, because you're becoming that oneness with that which you want to influence. You're not being separated from the water, you're becoming the water itself. So therefore, you're creating such a resonant field in which the molecules of the water are merging into your own molecules. And then you're, as the axis, you're capable to influence it, you know? And for instance, you were saying about the video games. It's also about that, acknowledging that all the truth has been there all the way, you know, from the moment that um, amnesia had its most expansive stage, all the way now that amnesia is slowly, detaching from where we are detaching those anchors that were placed in order to enhance amnesia, and that were also placed at a holographic scale, and then reflected, materialized in our body through the disconnection of the brain hemispheres, through very specific chromosomes that are dormant, through very specific genes that are dormant, and that when we restore them, then we acknowledge that even we are capable to generate our own vitamin C, like continuously at a very high scale, that, and also removing some anchors that are connecting to that fact of like the idea of the black hole, that the mainstream, that the standard model of science has, that this force that is sucking all form of life and leaving anything behind, and moving on to actually a conception of a black hole where it is the source to life, and that they are quite stable, and that actually, they're just leading to another place, and they're torsioning the information. So um yeah, like when we actually are aware of all this information, then we are removing all those anchors and imprisonments of bubbles of reality that are placed through the hologram to, and this is where I love this part, because that could be the most challenging one for the ego, which is when we acknowledge that which we have created is an extension of ourselves, and that only we can influence it as the water when we receive the information that is coming from those poles, from, let's say, they display polarity from those negative poles, and then we acknowledge that it was all coming from us. We are creating that hologram through our form of perception. So then we find a purpose for those control systems to be, bringing all that energy and now use it to create a new model, not to repel it. And that's also the key to the revolution that you were mentioning in the very beginning. For me, it's not, we need to step up into another form of transition, of transcending a reality which is focusing in what we in that which we want to create.
It is. And yeah, a big part of that is claiming our responsibility as creators of our reality. Whether we're creating consciously or unconsciously, we are creating our reality. So when we actually take full responsibility for what we're creating, then we have the power to bring change. And
Exactly.
as you mentioned earlier, there's about Indigenous people and stories. Firstly, it's really important that all of us remember we are all indigenous of planet Earth.
Yes.
And through the different stories of the Indigenous people, be that of a red road path, a green path, a yellow path, regardless of the path, all stories of creation tell us we're from the cosmos and inhabiting these earthly bodies. So when we can remember that, and it does not matter which pathway of remembering we need to walk to remember ourselves, to bring ourselves back together. What happens is we actually rebuild that connection to our cosmic, our galactic, our universal origins through these physical bodies. And although many of the creation stories hold that wisdom, very few have embodied that connection since the time of disconnection, since the time of the fall of the firmament. The wisdom remains within the stories, and when they are told in the language that they were created, in the tones and frequencies of their creation, they carry keys and codes that will open it within our own systems, systematically, simultaneously, and automatically, because the keys lie within and they're the codes that match.
Yes. Yes. Now speaking of keys and arcs that we were also talking about earlier, in relation to the cubes and the discs and so forth. The area of Aquarius, if we relate, that 26,000 years of transition in order to reach again the photon belt of Alcyon. This is a huge propelling force, along with Alcyon black hole in the center as the sun, which is actually that magnetic force that is bringing even the solar system to, rotate around it. And this upgrade, this level of consciousness that we're bringing through the Alcyon plasma codes is, let's say, blue plasma, which consciousness is mainly preparing us to step up into that level of responsibility. Because now if we move into the star system, which Alcyon is part of, the Pleiades. The Pleiades is also known as the rings of the serpent's tail, the rattlesnake,
those rings. And what is the ring? The ring sometimes somehow is considered as the wholeness, you know, like the dot that contains everything. However, if that dot is not moving, is not spinning, it represents period, you know, period, it's done. You know, equally that the idea of that. So, like the Ouroboros, when the Ouroboros is not fulfilling its cycle, when it's just a seal there, you know, planted at that bidimensional form, it's representing incompletion because it's not going to its full process of diving into itself and then remerging, you know, like, and then it is also planting or anchoring the idea of Kronos, because Kronos devours his sons, but not himself. And this is what this simulation control system is doing, is about devouring outside, trying to devour nature, trying to devour the other, the energy of other, bam, bam. The moment when we look back into ourselves and we are willing and brave enough to devour ourselves in order to remerge and regenerate ourselves, then we're fulfilling that cycle. And that fear that we have to transcend in order to reach that state, that illumination, is what is actually creating that paradigm of the earth coming to an end, you know, and therefore acting from a space of fear and, you know, creating collective egregores that could lead actually to specific consequences where we are putting our power and our life on the hands of something, of an external force. However, when we bring all that inside, then we are actually coming into that level of consciousness that Alcyon plasma is telling us. Activate our plasma body as luminescent beings, you know, and then we will see what happens. But yet we need to be
And then the adventure begins.
Yeah, I wonder how will those cosmic teas will be then. You know, how would they look like?
Oh, so grateful for you. And I'm sure we have many more cosmic teas at the cafe on the event horizon in the
Yeah.
times to come. I so love to share tea with you, my dear sister.
Yes,
It's
like
such a gift to have the level of embodied wisdom
thank you.
that you embody, that you have remembered, that you've reclaimed on this journey to
Well, I honor yours as well. And I am grateful for sharing with you and feeling sustained and accompanied, you know, within this free and sovereign aspect of this path, where we are illuminating ourselves as we continue to remember and being and shining our true essence. So it's a full honor and pleasure and joy. And
Oh, so much. Thank you. And thank you for everyone who is reclaiming themselves, remembering themselves, and sharing this journey with us. For in this age of Aquarius, it is through common unity that we will birth our new earth systems and structures, and to know the potential for us to birth that is available now. There's nothing that needs waiting for. And it's a matter of no longer compromising and coming into alignment through the bodies with truth and integrity in the heart, and saying yes to life It is time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
Thank
Yes.
you. Thank you,
Yes to our
everybody.
light. Thank you. Yes, thank you. Thank you. And yeah, until next time. And well, love you. Love you and love you all. Thank you.
Yeah. Much love to you and all.
Yes.